This is the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast, session number 216. Martin Castor Peterson on One Session Wonders.
Welcome to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast with Jason Linett, your professional resource for hypnosis training and outstanding business success. Here's your host, Jason Linett.
Welcome back to the program, and a welcome back to Martin Castor Peterson, who previously was on the program back in December 2016 on episode number 92. Here we go, about 3 years later, coming back to discuss a rather questionable, if not at times controversial theme in the hypnotic profession. The idea of what we like to call the one-session wonder. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with this concept, it's the question of, can you produce massive, significant change in the shape of just one session? Even more than that, can you put out to the public the promise that you can do the same thing? You can create massive, significant change in the shape of just one session. Well, you're going to see that we come down to one rather simple answer. It depends. Although in this session, you're going to hear Martin and I have a bit of a conversation around what are some of those things that happen that help to produce that one session wonder result. What are some of the themes? What are some of the ideas of, do we go after the behavior itself? Do we go after the backstory? Or as Martin says, do we go after the intention? And some beautiful conversational hypnosis strategies that you can set in motion to really help increase that efficacy of a simple one session result. Though, of course, you're going to hear our dialogue around how, of course, to create that opportunity for more work if that's what's going to be appropriate. So really listen to this episode all the way through. You're going to find there's a lot of important takeaways, some important themes, and really some rather simple concepts that you can plug into your work immediately. And I'd encourage, check out thehypnoacademy.com. That's actually Martin's website. We can learn about his programs, his upcoming training that he's going to mention here that's coming up rather soon for those of you that are listening to this episode as it launches. Again, check that out over at thehypnoacademy.com. While you're online, also check out hypnoticworkers.com. This is the all-access pass to my hypnosis training library. Everything from techniques for change to full client sessions to model. Check that out at hypnoticworkers.com. And with that, let's jump directly into this content-packed session. Take some notes, put this stuff to use. This is session number 216, Martin Castor Peterson on One Session Wonders. So, Martin, we were chatting online and we got off on the topic of one session wonders. And I know there's no straightforward answer to this question, but here we go, Martin. One session wonders, pro or con?
Yeah. It depends on the conversation, really. I think, we had this discussion and I think it's fun because going to all the conferences we do and gatherings of professionals or semi-professionals, it's always like the biggest debate when it comes to that. We will have the dinosaurs and professionals saying, well, there's no such thing. And you will have the same people, but in the other camp or the other side of the room saying, well, there is a such thing. So I think it's all about what set of expectation do you put in the minds of your clients and how do you really work with hypnosis? Because if you work with hypnosis in a classical term, I'm pretty sure there will be no one session wonders unless it's the ones that happens out of the shadow of just randomness, really. And it's usually a result that is never spoken of in the session. And I love those moments because if it can surprise your client and if it can surprise you, it's really awesome, isn't it?
I go back to the idea of prestige suggestion.
Yeah.
And this is something we talk about as usually being a negative thing that, maybe here's the parent who says, you're just like your father, you're always going to be a loser. Mm-hmm. Or, not to put down any other profession, but the doctor who says, well, with this condition, you're never going to walk again, which, maybe yes, maybe not. And sometimes, and you can't plan this, you may land the one specific thing the person needed to hear. My quick example is, here's this woman that I worked with years ago, and she says, I got her to quit smoking with one sound effect. That she's in the office and the whole story is how bad this recent breakup was and how horrible it is. And I'm letting her go for a while and I'm remembering, yes, she's here for stop smoking. And this is the exact language from the room because she had used it. Oh, it's horrible. And he promised this, he promised that. And I just
Yeah,
found the right opening to go, yeah, but you were a 2 pack a day smoker before you met this asshole, right?
yeah.
She goes, yeah. I go, huh. And her feedback was that sound effect of, huh. She
Yeah,
goes, in
that was
that
it.
moment, I stopped.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because uh, I love those moments, and that is usually what most people connect with what we call the one session wonders, right? And I think the biggest misconception in all of this is people promising clients one session wonders, but their approach is classic, it's old school, and it's them actually crossing fingers throughout the whole session,
Oh, yeah.
hoping for that moment you just explained, but they have no guarantee it will happen because of the session setup. So what took me quite a while was actually to go and try and decode all my sessions throughout the past 5 or 7 years, thinking, okay, so all the amazing results I've got, what happened in the session? And analyzing all of that, the interesting thing was actually in the sessions where everything happened like a session wonder, and I usually say the bigger problem the client think it is, the closer we get to the one session wonder for
Yeah.
some weird reason.
Yeah.
And
Same as, and if anyone out there is a potential client for any hypnotist, do not let this sway you. But it's that discovery that the one who's smoking 3 packs a day just stops.
yeah,
The one who's holding on to those 2 or 3 single cigarettes a day, that's the one I usually have who walks in going saying they're addicted.
yeah,
But it's that place where the bigger the issue, the more rapid the quality of the change I found.
exactly. So there's a couple of things I focused on from separating the old way of doing it to a new way of doing it. First of all, separate intention from behavior, because a lot of therapists out there is actually dealing with the behavior as the problem. But behavior is always a result of an intention or a wanting. So instead of just spending 3 sessions talking about the bad behavior and how to get rid of it and how to do things instead, we are not really taking care of the actual initial intention behind it, and that's the problem. Though that's why some clients keep coming back, because it's never really solved, is it? So that is the one focus I started to do.
Yeah. Is there a story? Is there an example of that you can share?
Well, there is actually a story, because I remember, well, actually, basically, my first stop smoking client ever, like way back. It was a friend of mine, and what I thought we should do was actually talk about the behavior as something he knew it was bad. So I was taught in school that, well, we have to lecture them in what other kind of bad things can happen if they continue. So we could kind of create this negative image of the future if they don't stop now. And 99.9% of the entire session was all about negative or creating negative. And he hated cauliflower. For some reason, he hated that. So from the stuff I was taught in school doing hypnosis was, well, let's combine the taste of cigarettes with cauliflower, because apparently he hates that. So we can have those two battle it out. And what happened 2 weeks later, he came in like, I think I need another session. I'm like, okay, so are you not a non-smoker anymore? He's like, yeah, well, I'm actually smoking again. And the problem is, I started eating cauliflower too. I'm like, so what the hell went wrong? Because I did everything like a textbook example of everything that was in my manual. So I kind of like lost faith in it. So we only talked about behavior and how to try and get around the behavior by really demonstrating more negative behavior. And that is not very suitable for the brain, is it? So instead of that, looking at all the sessions I've done, all the sessions that just had like a home run on the first hit was all the sessions where I basically pattern interrupted them every time they wanted to talk about the behavior or the problem.
Nice.
I'm not really sure why I did it, because that was way before I met John Overdorf and all those ideas. But I just kept pattern interrupting because I was fed up about all the negativity. And I was fed up with the idea that I had to analyze them and try to find a solution for them, because my one simple question was, how do you want to feel when you wake up tomorrow and you're even better than the result you think is possible to create today? And they went like, I never thought about that. But they always had an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of focusing on the bad behavior or the negatives, I wanted to focus on how they think things could be better tomorrow when they wake up and everything is fine. So by doing that, suddenly the intention behind it kind of like surfaced by itself. And that changed the behavior instantly right there, because that's how the neural networks work and that's how the synapses follow up on that. And instead of just addressing or attacking the behavior as the negative one, when we went to the actual source of intention, they sorted out the issue with the behavior and they changed it. Just like a 6-step reframe kind of thing. If you do NLP, you find 3 alternatives to the old behavior that is now positive, and then the brain adapts to that. But this was in a way more sophisticated or more efficient. I'm not really sure why then, but now I know why, because that's basically how the brain works. So there was a big gap in my manual of how to do hypnosis. I kept looking at it, but everything I realized is not part of that book. I'm like, so, hey, I'm doing everything wrong apparently. I love the background. I love the history. I love all my experiences with it. But something is wrong. So that is how I kind of like stepped out of the me being a mini me of somebody else, and just following the scripts or the manual as a step-by-step tool to fix your clients, because it didn't really work. Problem was, and that's the same problem I hear people talk about right now, and today when I talk about this is, well, if you see one client one time compared to the same client 10 times, the economics in that is way different. And I'm like, yeah, that's correct. But at the same time, when I'm coaching and mentoring fellow hypnotists, what they usually get fed up with is clients revisiting the office with barely any results or no results at all. Like, why didn't you go home and change that? Come on, right?
Or the most frustrating is, well, I feel better about things now, but I still haven't, fill in the blank. Yeah.
If that's not demotivating for you as a therapist, what is, right? So I kind of like changed my mindset 7-8 years ago to being only positive and see the resources and everything. So I'm like, yeah, well, first of all, if I see one client one time, maybe 2 on rare occasions, I feel totally ecstatic about that, because isn't that amazing? You can change somebody in such a short amount of time. And basically, I'm not changing them. They're changing on the go. And I see that. So they see it on the go. And in spite of thinking, oh, that's 9 sessions out of the window, I'm thinking, good stuff. I'm not seeing them again for the same problem. They did the work already. Awesome. Right. And they go back home and then tell 5 colleagues, then 5 friends, and then 5 people from down the street. And now I got 15 potential clients who saw the results from that one session. And I'm like, if that's not amazing, getting 15 new clients because of one person who changed in one session, and they can see the results. It's not just an idea or story. They can see it. So they walk into my office with a really high expectation of change, and that helps my session.
Yeah. So well, I mean, to especially look at it of the experience that here's someone who's getting that result, and to build the business model, as I'd say, of raving fans rather than lifelong dependents.
Oh yeah, I think we have a mutual fellow hypnotist out of the UK who's not very fond of the word hypnotherapist, so he calls him hypno the rapist. And I, in the past, I was kind of like, oh well, that's really demeaning of saying something like that, because that is really making fun and games out of something I take very seriously. But if we look at this in the perspective I just talked about, it kind of like makes sense in a way, because why do we want to have people leaving the office knowing we could have done better?
Mm-hmm.
And some people just accept that, and it's not my quest to go and change that, as long as I feel happy while sitting in the chair of the therapist, because I want to feel happy. I want to show my clients how happy you can be, even though that you might have faced some of the biggest crisis you ever had in life, but you went through it, and you're on the good side of the surface right now, and now you're showing others that you can do it. Because if you're not able to do that, your clients wouldn't be able to do it, right?
There you go. But let's go back for a second, because I
Yeah.
love the theme of framing. That's so much of what we could do if we frame it in a different way. That's what really sets that expectation. And I'd share briefly something you mentioned of crossing the fingers. And it's amazing how sometimes one statement at the right time can completely shift the expectation. That when I greet my clients, I tell them now in the lobby, for your benefit and mine, I am extremely impatient. So during this time together, it's not going to be the game of crossing the fingers. Hope it works. Let me know how it goes.
Yeah.
Instead, you're going to see that there's ways I'm checking in with you the entire time, that we're both going to be getting that feedback that we've taken care of this thing.
Yeah.
Sound good? Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Come on back. And just that little bit of an expectation shift. I hesitate to say this sometimes, but it takes techniques. And I love the phrase of going placebo on stuff that actually works.
Exactly.
So the technique was effective. However, the framing made it just world class. So what are you doing to build that framing around it?
Well, I'm doing something similar in a way, but it might be a little bit different, because I do know that most clients think they're unique in their problem state. And they think, well, I might be the only one with this kind of problem, or as deep as this problem feels. And they think they're unique in a way that's very negative. And if I kind of followed along with that and did what most people do, like, okay, so well, tell me about your problem and how often do you feel it, and all of that, right? I just go, oh, that's interesting, because I had numerous of clients with similar problems, but way more severe, and they had less resources than you. So today will be fun. You might think it was a problem, but today will be fun. So finally, you picked the right time, huh? And they go, huh? I'm like, that's basically the state I want them in, because now I shattered the neural networks of them thinking they know what the problem is. Because basically, we know, and most people who are listening right now, they know that the idea of the problem that's in the mind of the client is never really the problem.
Yeah.
So I want to go beyond that as fast as possible. And another thing I want to share is, instead of building high expectation up to the moment where am I hypnotized or not, because that's usually the critical point of any session as being a hypnotherapist, right? I'm totally destroying that from the very first moment. Basically, I'm totally destroying it. And clients, they're so confused about it, but they forget about it, and they forgot about the problem when they open their eyes again. And the first question would be like, was I hypnotized? And my counter answer question would be, I don't know. Were you? And they go, I don't know. And again, I will go, probably you were then, right? And so
I just wanted to throw in the phrase, I sure hope so.
yeah, but I know it, and I trust it. And as long as I feel like that, they have no doubt it happened. But the way I get them there is basically because they think we have to talk about hypnosis. We have to talk about trance, what to expect and all of that. They already know it. So there's no need to go into any kind of describing what hypnosis is and how to get them there. Because if there's one thing that is not on the spot or exactly as I told them, their conscious minds will go and resist that and think, well, that's not what you told me. And I don't want them to be in that kind of situation. So what I do is usually they want to, they step into the office. They might have a list with them with things they want to talk about. And I go, so what's the theme of the problem today? And they go, it's this. And I'm like, okay. And usually they follow up with something they want to talk about. And I'll just pattern interrupt saying, that's okay. I'll get back to that later. But before we do so, how do you want to feel tomorrow when you wake up and everything is more fine than you think it's possible right now? And that confuses them, and then start talking about that. And then I go, well, before we do anything that has to do with anything of, related to hypnosis, I just wanted to sit down and close your eyes and think about a great memory you had in the past, somewhere where you're by yourself outside, maybe in the nature, and tell me how that feels like right now. And in that moment, they interact with that old memory. It's positive. They feel it. So now I got all the senses going already without even doing an induction. And I'm kind of like focusing on the prime moment in that experience, and I'm creating creativity within their mind by focusing on it, and do like a 30-second relaxation process. And now we can start doing therapy without doing like a classic induction. And they never know what hit them. If you had the EEG devices or whatever in your office, you will see they go straight down to 7 or 8 hertz per second in that very moment where we talk about the senses, how they feel in that moment they're thinking of right now. And that is really interesting. And that is 3 to 5 minutes within my session.
Mm-hmm.
That leaves 55 minutes to talk about all the resources and all the solutions they already know. And in that way, that is how I pre-frame them. So there's not going to be another question about the problem. There's not going to be another resisting part in the conscious mind thinking, well, is this working at all? Because they're all hyped, they're all excited about the experience. And every time they're thinking something, I will go straight to the body asking them, so how does that feel? And how do you know? And if it's a negative, they get confused because they don't really know. And that means it must be something different. And if they do feel it, means it's something positive. And I'll just, expand that even more. So it overtakes whatever doubt that might be left in the brain. And that will make the positive intention and neural network even more powerful.
But in many ways, you're taking that positive resource and now re-imprinting it. And I imagine, yes, at times you are, of course, going back to that behavior, but I always go back to Dr. John Hartland, the classic ego strengthening approach, that this goes back to the argument of, oh, if you take away the negative behavior, it's going to have to come about somewhere else even worse. And he was out to disprove that. And by putting together his methods, he was basically negating the need for hypnoanalysis, finding a much faster result. And the premise was build up the individual before going after, quote, direct symptom removal.
Yeah.
So in a similar formula of drawing out the strengths, what do you already have? And it's something that, and tell me if you find this too, working with clients, that, and this is not to put down in any category, yet the one whose entire life is in disarray, everything is falling apart, nothing is going well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, those are not the ones calling us.
No.
It's usually, here's everything that's going right. It's just that one thing.
Yeah.
Which there's every bit of a foot in the door, every bit of resources to duplicate, copy, and paste and bring into the process.
Yeah, and I think, my practice might be a little bit different because I feel like I got like 50-50 of both, actually. But that might relate to the reputation I have in when I do live sessions in Europe, because that is kind of like, well, if nobody else can fix you, go see Martin. So I usually get those who think I am the last option.
Yeah.
And most therapists will think like, oh my God, I can only fail on this one, because what if something happens? What if nothing happens, right? But I'm like, okay, if they're already hyped about I am the last option, why not utilizing that and let them know within the first minute that they made the right decision today, because I do things differently. And that's the only thing I tell them. I'm like, everything so far, all the positives, take those with you. All the negatives, just leave them behind, because I do things differently.
Yeah. There's so much power in that. There's so much power in that framing.
And it's true, because I'm me, so I do things differently, right? And that statement alone gives me all the rights to enter the mind and help them do the change work, because they trust me from the very beginning. Instead of me starting to ask questions like being hesitant about really knowing what to do, I just go straight to it. Like, oh, that's awesome. Well, we're going to fix that today, and I believe in it. So that's the difference. I don't just say it because it's a fancy thing to do. I know it. I know we will do great today. So with that energy within my whole behavior, that overtakes the session, and they're there with me within seconds, really.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is there a story of working with someone in that respect where here's everything that was a challenge, and just really by interrupting that process, that's what got the change?
Yeah, because to kind of like to flip it just a little bit, what a lot of people are afraid of when they're seeing clients is kind of like challenge the old problem in the end of the session.
Yes.
And I do understand that because I did that for so many years. I was kind of like, oh, this is the time we can fail, and the client wants the money back and all of that. And you know me, I'm not afraid of anything really. And if people say that's impossible, I will say let's prove it's possible. So one of my techniques that I use, without going into details, is basically one of my finishing techniques before I end the session is giving the client opportunity on a conscious level, on an ego conscious level, and also on an unconscious level to challenge me with the results of the session, with not just a problem, but anything they consider was a problem before they actually came into my office from their entire life. And I'm stacking all those problems on top of each other as a visual thing, telling them you will be able to feel and sense everything in just a moment. But you know what? You will just take one step through, and you know what? You will find another resource, and you will just wipe away the dust from your shoulders, and you will feel amazing. Nod your head when you know you're ready now. And they takes a second, they nodding their head and say, go. And there will be this big sigh and a deep breath, and they start smiling. And I say, how great was that? And most of them are kind of like touched to tears or ecstatic. And I said, can we agree on the fact that just one of those many, many, many things, if we did talk about that before the session, you'll be way too emotional to continue with the session. And they all agree on that. And now comes another thing. I say, I will tell you now to do your best and try and connect to everything you think was part of the problem in the past. And I want you to try and feel it, but let me know what happens instead. Mm. And you can you see them or watch them sit there for like 30 seconds, really trying, but nothing happens. That means when they open up their eyes and then tell me about the new resource that they discovered by doing the Judgment Day kind of experience, just walking through it all, right? There's nothing at all in the conscious mind, which is the problem mind. There's nothing in the conscious mind now that can mess with the results of the session, because if there was anything left, if there was any creative idea, it would have happened within that last technique, because they are way more creative in that technique than they are when they open up their eyes, because now they're just conscious with one focus point, right? So in that way, I just sit there and look at them smiling, saying, how does that really feel now? And I will have them give me confirmation that everything they feel right now is way beyond what they thought was possible before the session. And now I'm multiplying that, saying, well, this happened just within an hour. Mm-hmm. Think about how that feels tomorrow when you wake up and had a good night's sleep and many hours on top of that, because this was just 1 hour. And they go, wow. And that's how people leave my office. And that makes things so powerful. And it's kind of like a guarantee, or less. It's difficult to say guarantee though, but it's 99 out of 100 who get that experience from a session when I structure it like this. And in my world, that is the one session wonder that most people are afraid of. But It's just a different approach. So back to the very beginning.
Well, I mean, let's elaborate on that. It's that moment of really challenging the change, really just call out, testing the work.
Yeah.
So rather than, again, the fingers crossed, hope it works, we're getting that feedback mechanism in the room where it usually, tell me if it's the same in your space, it usually starts with a bit of confusion on their part to go, Absolutely. I can't recreate it. I can't create it. And this becomes that place to become a little provocative at times of, no, really, try to bring back that sensation.
Yep.
It's why we're here.
Exactly. And I totally agree with that, because I will be quite provocative throughout the session. And that is not to piss them off or anything like that. It's basically to provoke the conscious mind, because it can take only so much. And if it gets a little bit too much, it will just leave the conversation. And I want the conscious mind to leave the conversation. I only want the conscious mind to answer if it's spoken to. because all our clients really are, all that you are and I am, is change. And basically, let's bend that a little bit, because we are way more than change. All we are is changing all the time. So don't show up at my office telling me, well, it's been like this for a year now, nothing else happened. Impossible. So, because if I believe in everything that we are is changing, imagine how much stuff that can be done in 59 minutes sitting in my chair, right? So I totally believe in it. And that is the biggest vibrant energy of the conversation between me and my clients. So I drag them into that mindset without them really knowing it, and they're going to be in that mindset within a couple of minutes from the very beginning of the session, and that is really wonderful.
So to play the other side of it, you're in that moment towards the end,
Yeah.
and they are still holding on to the problem. They are still able to recreate that situation. What now?
Never happened the past 7 years.
Nice.
Yeah. And if
Well, what about the
I had
experience
somebody
of?
saying
Oh
like,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I had somebody saying like, well, what if there's still a problem?
Yeah.
And most people be totally, maybe even devastated by that, thinking, oh, we have to do it all over again.
Or as Melissa Tears calls it, but I'm not really in that situation right now.
Yeah, right. So what I do instead is, well, that's a brilliant idea, but what is it that you really know now that will happen if you thought that was a possibility? And now they give me the answer. So it's just a creative idea of what if. But asking them a deepening question, they will actually explain to me how they will solve it by themselves with all the resources they just got. And I will say, that's it. That sounds like a good idea. So what's the problem? And now they go, I don't know. So they just solved it. So and if it happens in something that will be similar to this, I will just give that as another suggestion. Thinking about everything that could happen from when you leave the office and every day you wake up and life happens in front of you, how easy you will adapt to the challenges and see the resources and how to overcome it, how to say yes and how to say no in the right situations, because you now know who you are. And they go, oh yeah, that's right. So I'm just multiplying the experience and the resources by a question like that. So if people give me a question like that, I will go rubbing my hands, going like, oh, we're going to multiply the results right now. Instead of thinking, oh shit, I didn't expect that, right?
Yeah.
So I just reframe it on the go and right away, because we have to remove all doubt, and we have to remember that there's really nothing as being negative or doubt, really. What it really is them protecting themselves and doing the best to survive in the mindset of a Neanderthal. Because that's what we do. If we have too strong emotions, that might be hurtful, that might be dangerous, because will we be able to survive if we're standing in the corner feeling ourselves and knowing, oh, I feel love right now? Would we see the mammoth come storming from behind and spear us in the back while standing in the corner smelling a flower, right? So that's basically it. So we still have that old Neanderthal survival mode within our brains, because it will never leave, actually. That's why we keep a pessimistic mind on some occasions, thinking, what could go wrong? But if you actually in control, you can take control of that situation, knowing that there might be some challenges. So I will pick that way because that is the most resourceful way for me, and that is a better outcome. Instead of just standing there frozen in a moment of time of the challenge or the problem, right? So that is the biggest difference, I think.
So inside of this, is there that still formal, let's call it transinduction, the close your eyes, follow my instructions? Because so much of this has been, and this is how I work as well, I mean, conversational in nature, and again, back to framing how we present what's going on.
Yeah. So what's the
question? Yes. Is there formal, let's call it hypnosis inside of that, of close your eyes, now follow my instructions?
Well, yeah. Well,
or does it more, develop organically out of it?
Yeah, because, hypnosis is hypnosis. And people usually connect hypnosis with the method of how to get people there, or the techniques or whatever. In my world, hypnosis is a state of mind. It's where we can get the stuff done. So it's a tool. It's not a brand or a product.
Hmm.
So yeah, there. If we look into the old books, I think one of my oldest ones is Tourette's 1888 books on hypnotherapy, or not hypnotherapy in a modern way, but still it has elements of how I do my conversational hypnotherapy today, because it's all about the resourceful state and how to overcome challenges. So in that perspective, it still has a lot of elements of how to structure a regular hypnosis session. But I'm leaving out all the analysis and all the conclusions that I have to draw on behalf of my client. I'm leaving all of that out of the question. So what hypnosis really is, even if you go all the way back to the old Egypt of the sleep temples, that was basically of getting people into the most resourceful state and have them to battle it out with the positive resources and create an even better outcome on the other side. So if you look at hypnosis like that, that is basically what I do. The only thing I modified is changing that into a modern language and applying all the the knowledge of the brain and the quantum physics or whatever. Applied all of that into the methods and the techniques, so I know that what I'm doing actually is factual based on the evidence of the science today. In that way, I can speed up some processes, I can leave out others, or I can apply new ones because that is the latest details from the scientific world of how the brain works. So it's all those layers, but in my world, it's still just hypnosis.
Yeah. Well, it's the labeling of it where we often get hung up on it, the jargon around
Yeah.
it. And, to go directly to the point of, I love the insight of going after those resources and really rewriting that story that I've been saying to clients in recent months, just, referencing over to my laptop that's in the corner. Hey, that thing's got a really big hard drive and the computer crashed a couple of weeks ago and I had to wipe everything clean. And to delete all of that information took seconds. And we'd
Yeah.
like to think our brain is that advanced organ. And yet it's a little bit more like the old VHS cassette tape where you've got to stick it in the machine and hit record and write something over it.
Yeah,
So, which, with that in mind, how would you like to feel today?
exactly.
And from there, that then builds off that process of here are those strengths that you've got, here are those resources, and finding that place to then, is there a specific place in your process where, let's say, you're moving away from intention and then reminding them back to the problem that, yes, they hired you to help them resolve?
Not intentionally, I think, or not
Hmm.
something that is structured, but considering what you just told me, I'm doing something similar sometimes when I have clients saying, "Well, my experience on my trauma is huge, so this will take sessions." I'm like, "How do you know that?"
Yeah,
And they go, "Well, it's been with me for 25 years." I'm like, "How fast do you think the trauma actually happened?"
exactly.
And they go, "Well, within a split second." I'm like, "That's correct. That is the real trauma. Why do you think that is different from any other trauma?" And they go, "Well, it's been with me for 25 years. And now I reveal the real world to them, saying, well, everything that happened since that split second until this moment is something you applied to the real origin of the trauma. So that is not real. It's something you apply to it and make it real, but it's really not, is it? So if it could be created in a split second, how fast do you think it can be removed?" And they go, "Oh." And in that moment, whatever they think was impossible to deal with now becomes very possible. And now it becomes a fun session
Hmm.
because now they get a little bit eager actually to go into it and actually experience it a little bit, figuring out what was it really way back 25 years ago? What was it really? Because everything else, imagine how many split seconds you had for the past 25 years on top of that. Those are all false realities, has nothing to do with the real trauma. And that's what I'm looking for. So I want to solve the real trauma and have everything else just dissolve by itself.
Yeah, when you look at major life changes, someone's belief structure of, let's call it either religion or politics
Yeah.
changes, or someone's in a relationship and they quote, discover new information. That thing is over.
Yep.
And it may have been reinforced over the years by other experiences. And just that little nugget alone, I mean, that's really what sets us up for that instant change.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's interesting because it's never what the client think it is. And if I spend like the night before I'm seeing clients, figuring out what to do with my clients, that would be a waste of time anyway. So I don't want to know anything about my clients before they actually arrive to my office. I don't want to know about the problems. I just want to like a title to the session so I can manage or kind of know just a little bit, but I know for a fact it will never be that topic anyway.
Yeah.
So that's the interesting part. It makes it easier for me in a way.
So if you had to put a percentage on it, like how much time are you spending on quote, and I'm perhaps not a true regression to cause type model, but how much of the process is focused on that old story though?
Well, here's the thing though. It's really difficult to put a number on it because if we're talking about it in a sense where we step into that old story and we talk about the details, I'm not really doing that anymore because I will have people work through a trauma model where they never have to access the actual trauma or issue or situation, but they can still deal with it.
Yeah.
So in the old way I did stuff, it might be 5 to 10% at least in any session, and that will require more time because they get stuck in the emotions. That is usually false anyway. But now, as we are kind of like attacking it from different points of view, because they know what happened in the subconscious mind, it knows what happened. So we don't have to visit it or go through it or whatever to get the conscious mind to understand it because it will never understand it anyway. So I'm looking for the truth in it and what really happened and what they gained from it in a positive way. And in that way, they can dissolve the trauma by themselves without even have to go through it or just look at it really. So it's really amazing what you can do today with different approaches compared to old school stuff.
Well, I think what's great about that is to put the intention on the result, that some of the older methodologies that are shared inside of regression are more focused on insight. Well, here's why I feel that way,
Yeah.
which unfortunately you've had those clients where, well, now I know why I feel this way, and now I feel even worse about it.
Yeah.
Instead, to put every bit of that intention on how do I get out of it? How do I not have to live that way anymore? How do I already have the strength to catch up to really where I am now and not have to keep repeating that same old story?
Exactly. So let's leave out all those questions and doubting and concerns about what should we do and just go straight through the process of getting into the resourceful state and it has all the answers anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically how I do it.
So what you're telling me is one session wonders were on the pro side.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Only took us 39 minutes and 39 seconds.
Exactly.
There you go. So where can people find out more about you online?
Well, they can go to martincastorlive.com or thehypnoacademy.com and I actually got some good stuff coming up in very short time, actually.
Yeah, share what's coming up.
I'm going to be in Scottsdale from June 6th, and I'll do the very first Train the Trainer of getting to know and how to do all my protocols, all my techniques within modern hypnotherapy. But it's not just going to be a basic course. It's actually going to be a Train the Trainer. So people who attend that will be able to do their own classes afterwards and be able to certify within several organizations so they can have students and teach other people how to do this amazing stuff in a modern way. So I'm really much looking forward to that. It's going to be a special one, though.
Yeah, so the ability to learn how to do it, but also how to share it with others?
Exactly.
Yeah. And give like an overview. I know we've been talking about it for a while here, but like an overview of the actual content, the approach.
Yeah, well, if usually when you go to like a Train the Trainers class, usually, and you might agree with this, usually you go through the manual and you talk about the steps in the manual so you know your future students will understand the manual as you read it right now. And I'm really not fond of that. So because everyone can read a manual, everybody can teach from a manual, but the question is, are you really good as a teacher? So the choices I've made on this training is basically I divided up into two chunks of 4 days with 1 day in between. The first 4 days is going to be all about finding your inner passion of teaching and how to inspire others. So it doesn't really matter if you're going to teach a class, if you're going to speak at a TEDx event or in corporate or whatever. I will teach you how to find your inner passion for teaching and inspiring and motivating others through some really amazing techniques. Because if there's one thing I do not want out of a class like this would be seeing 10 more mini-me's walking around in the world, saying stuff like me and do like I do. I want to see people who can inspire me. So that is the main purpose of the training, developing other people who can also inspire me as a person. So it's going to be 4 days into the depth of really knowing how to teach, how to use a model that will be beneficial for all students. So you will actually have accelerated learning in a faster way, in a more powerful way. So that it makes your teaching so much easier and structured. And then a day off, people can go to Sedona. It's Scottsdale, 2 hours away from Sedona. It's going to be beautiful there. And then 4 days about all my techniques and the content, but not in a let's go through the content, because everyone will get access to all the content beforehand, so they know about it. But we will go into the depth of the content so people know, why did I make that decision? Why did I put that technique right there? Why is it there at all? And why isn't there other techniques? So they're going to get all the science and all the proof of why it's set up like it is, so they know why they're using it, and they know why it's structured in that way, so they know and understand the science behind the protocol. That's basically it. And on top of all of that, they will be able to work with anyone at any time without looking at any paper, just looking into the client's eye and go, here we go, get ready. Something
Nice.
like that. Yeah.
Cool. And what's the website again where they can learn more about that?
If they go to thehypnoacademy.com, they will get all the information from the instructors menu. Or if they go to Martin Castor, CASTOR, live.com, martincastorlive.com, there'll be a button there saying, well, we got the trainer coming up in Scottsdale. So it has all the information. Otherwise, find me on Facebook, on Instagram, on all the social media, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Cool. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Let's have a final question. So as you've been listening to all of this, not just you, Jason, but everybody who's listening right now, is I want you to think about who you really are in what you do. Because you might have an idea, but what would happen if you stepped outside of that box and looked at things in a different way? Did you actually pay attention to all the background on all sides? Did you actually pay attention to the change work you've been through, even though you thought you just sat there listening to other people? So I want you to imagine what more could happen in developing of your mind or you as a person, if you start paying attention to everything else there is right on the tip of your nose, but everything else also. So who are you really? And I'm not asking about your name or your title or what you do on a daily basis, but who you really are. What's your passion? What is your inner belief of what is your quest in life? What makes you happy, really happy? If you ask yourself that question every day, I'm pretty sure you'll start appreciate stuff way more. And even though you just had a bad experience, ask yourself this question. What in this experience would I have paid 10 grand to get? What kind of information, what kind of skill, what part of the experience made me wiser, better, stronger, that is worth 10K in a negative experience? Because that will change your perspective on anything and actually start appreciating that everything that you experience is good, because it's all resources. Think about that.
Jason Linett here once again, and as always, thank you so much for sharing this on your social media streams, leaving your reviews online, and once again, a good solid endorsement for a friend with an excellent program. Check out thehypnoacademy.com. If you're able to make the event coming up in June, highly recommend it. Martin's an excellent trainer, outstanding practitioner as well. Check that out at thehypnoacademy.com. All the links are in the show notes over at worksmarthypnosis.com. And while you're there too, check out hypnoticworkers.com. It's the ability to jump into my full hypnotherapy content in a simple format that everything is downloadable and every bit of it is transcribed. Model what's working now. That's hypnoticworkers.com. See you on the inside.
Thanks for listening to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast at worksmarthypnosis.com.
Hey there, it's Jason, and I want you to be one of the first to find out as we upload amazing new content. So do this right now. Click the subscribe button right here on this video. That's going to link you to our YouTube channel here, and you will be the first to find out as new resources and downloads are made available. Do it now.